Hey guys, so today I'm going to focus on talking about the FE function, kind of, continuing with my whole function series. And I would briefly end at the NI function, which is, the my first function. So I go backwards from like my inferior function, SE, to my dominant function, NI. And so on the topic of FE, I have noticed that a lot of people have given their thoughts about like the whole authenticity issue. And being an FE user myself, I'm actually I use it as a second function or a creative function. I'm very familiar with the use of FE because it is like almost the default function. The second function is also very a function that I'm very familiar with and I engage with most of the time. So I think that I'm able to offer my perspective as an INFJ on this whole like FE, whether it's authentic or not issue. And obviously, like I am a fan of, having a nuanced discussion. So my answer is obviously not going to be like, oh, it is authentic or it isn't. I would say it highly depends on a few situations. So the first situation is when an FI user may actually have a misunderstanding of FE function, and I think that is touched on by a lot of videos and a lot of kind of articles, blog articles as well about how FI and FE people often misunderstand each other. Like an FE user may see FI users as this like aloof personality, or they may not be able to feel the appreciation because it's not like obvious the way that FE is. FE likes to show appreciation in a very overt way, whereas FI is more of a what I'm feeling, that kind of thing. Like it's almost like telepathic. So FI users may show a distrust towards FE users for simply being like overly friendly or trying to be inclusive, like showing emotions in a very outward way that can feel a bit over the top for some FI users, especially for I noticed like INTJs, they're really not comfortable with FE. So, earlier in life, especially if they interact with a very strong FE user, like maybe an ENFJ or ESFJ, they may feel kind of uncomfortable because they feel like, oh, you are like showing too much emotion, and if it feels like, oh, why are you so friendly towards me when you barely know me? Whereas the FE user may actually be well intentioned. Like it could be a case where the FE user is trying to get to know people using FE, and that can be perceived as like not authentic when their intention is actually authentic. So that's like the first situation, which amounts to misunderstanding of different functions. But I also think that there is a second situation, which is something that I personally have encountered, where there is actual dishonesty involved. And in this situation, it depends on the person. So it's not so much as like, all FE users, are like this, but it's more like, it depends on how you use the function. So every function is kind of like a tool, right? So you can use the same functions, but you can use it in a very dramatically different manner. So with FE is the same, right? I noticed that there are some FE types, especially when they are younger, and particularly some FE dominant types back in high school actually, where they would be kind of using FE for a different reason than, just trying to connect to people or trying to understand people. They're actually using it for social power. And, when it comes to social power, the use of FE can feel manipulative because um, some people really do use it in a way that may not be like truthful to their own values and opinions. So one example that I found is actually through this older video that this YouTuber Pakoki did, and she actually talked about how sometimes ESFJs can seem to be disingenuous when they use FE in a way to like gain popularity, which obviously doesn't mean that all ESFJs do that. Because I've met like ESFJs who are pretty grounded and like they're not like constantly changing their opinions to fit the group. But definitely there have been cases in my experience in high school where, it sounds very stereotypical, but it really happened that, a few ESFJs would kind of say different things in different settings when they ask the same question because they are fitting into what is the popular opinion. And when you say like a different thing to the same like questions, it really feels like you don't know what's the real answer. It's like, how do I get to know you when you change your answer based on the group that you're in order to like fit in? So that is actually a reason why some people may have trust issues with this particular use of FE to gain social power. And it is kind of a forced harmony situation. It's not like they're actively trying to get people to feel included. It's more of the opposite. They are forcing harmony because they actually may not have the same opinions, but they still pretend like they do, in order to gain acceptance. And that can actually be a trait of an unhealthy FE usage, where this person maybe actually internally may feel insecure or need like validation from the outside, and so it leads to this like shape-shifting phenomenon where he or she uses FE in a way to gain social acceptance, to get people to like them, because generally speaking, people do tend to group according to their similarities, and they tend to not like differences. So I think some FE users, especially in like their younger days, may use that to gain social acceptance and in a way sacrifice their real identity. And that is actually very sad because it can really lead to the destruction of close relationships. And I've actually seen that again with a ESFJ. She actually said different things when she's with her friends, and behind their backs, and she would like say really nice things about them, but then when she's like talking to someone else, she actually presents a very different picture. And obviously eventually the friends found out, and there's a lot of like drama in their friendships, and they are not like close friends anymore as a result of the like lack of honesty. And so I really think that this is a problem with obviously immature FE users, and also usually younger people or people with some kind of social standing where they feel like they need to use that to preserve their social standing. And this is what I noticed, like even now, I realize that this is more prominent in the celebrity circle as well, and in like certain like influencer circle where people have a certain social standing, and so they want to like keep up this image, they want to keep up this like facade so that they can maintain the number of followers that they have. And I think that particularly FE dominant users may be more susceptible to this because of the fact that FE is very, very aware of our opinions of other people's opinions of us. So even as someone who uses FE as a second function, I am also very vulnerable to people's opinions of me. Like I definitely feel hurt when I notice that people may not like me, and I'm pretty sensitive towards that, even though I make a promise to myself because I want to make sure that I am true to myself, like that I will not change who I am. But I'm still hurt by, people's opinions of me, even though I don't show it as much. And I think this is true for all FE users, because FE users are very aware of like other people's emotions and how other people see them. And so what this like leads to, is that for some FE dominant users, it can be particularly strong. Like this effect on their emotional health can be particularly um, like significant. And so to counter that, they try to make themselves more likable so that they don't get this like impact of people not liking them, if that makes sense. So that's why, some of them would like do the shape shifting thing to get people to like them, because the opposite effect is really can be very detrimental when they don't have a developed TI to kind of support them and like tell them that it's okay to be your own person. And so this is also obviously um, actually in the celebrity circle, I noticed that even some male like dominant FE users do that, which is kind of strange because when I guess like you don't really um, hear much about like male FE dominant users because typically we always like have this stereotype of ESFJ or ENFJ being like this female caring person, but there's actually a lot of male ENFJs that I've encountered who have the same um, issues, especially when they have a strong social standing. They can tend to, put on this facade where you don't really know who is the person behind the mask. And there was this one guy, I think he's an influencer, and so, he would like reacts in a very over the top, like loving way towards his fans. And he would like, I think he would like heart react to every girl's comment on his post, which feels a little too much because it's like obvious that, him being an influencer, he doesn't really know those people, but he just shows so much like attention, to girls especially. And I think that to some people that can feel like not very true to his real feelings because he obviously doesn't know them personally. Um, and definitely that is tied to the social standing thing. So obviously, I'm not suggesting that all FE dominant users have this behavior. There are actually a lot of FE dominant users who are very authentic and they are very true to their values. But I think that because of the whole like, FE dominant users with social standing, like in celebrity circles or, or like high up the hierarchy in high school, because of these people, this select group of people, it kind of gives rise to this stereotype of, FE users being inauthentic, which does not really represent the whole, FE experience. And so just to, explain why they do that, and and to explain why, these people are particularly vulnerable to others' opinions, especially when they happen to be in situations where they are seen as a celebrity or some kind of stardom involved. Um, but obviously, FE can be used in a very different way depending on the user. So it's like the same way, SE can be used in a different way according to, the different users' decision. So just because, for example, an SE user can be a drug addict doesn't mean that every SE person has to be addicted to drugs, even though, SE as a function is definitely more vulnerable to, this hedonistic tendencies. But it can definitely be used in a different way to like achieve your goals and to be determined and so on. So it's the same with FE, right? Or any other function. It's like up to you to decide how to use it, and like exploring the gray areas, like how far you're gonna use it to your own advantage, and how far you're gonna use it to benefit like people around you. And now I'm gonna move on to this other dichotomy of FE, like the more mature use of FE versus the not so mature use of FE when it comes to like helping people. because FE is often known as the function that loves to help people, loves to help the world, and it's true, right? FE is very connected to the external environment, so people's emotions and also like society as a whole. Like we want to like make an impact on the world, and a lot of FE users try to do that. For SFJs, I realize that they tend to want to help out in a more like daily situations, like they may visit an old folks home, or they may try to like cook for their loved ones and give them a feeling of care and nurture. And for NFJ types, I would see like they tend to want to help out in a more macro scale, like they try to maybe involve themselves in some kind of movement, or they try to like write a book, or create music that impact people's emotions. And so obviously both are great, like both impact the world in different ways, and both are important ways. But I do see that there is a very huge difference between the mature way of helping people and like the more immature use of FE. So typically FE types want to help people in a very like, I guess, like direct way. They want to make a very direct impact. But when it's immature use of FE, it can lead to this mindset that they are often being selfless when they are not actually being selfless. So one example is when I was younger, I wanted to kind of play a role in someone's life, and by giving them advice, and by fixing their problems, or trying to find ways to fix their problems. And sometimes obviously like it is a good intention, but sometimes other people may not actually want that from me. And so just having this like pushiness is actually not something that would benefit them. It's actually something that benefits me, because like I was going into it with intention to kind of make my own life better by making other people's lives better. But I'm not actually thinking about whether they want that, whether that's actually helping them, because they may not be at a stage where they want to receive any advice from people, and they may not actually feel like they can benefit from it. And so, by pushing that on them, it's actually not a selfless trait, but it is a selfish trait. And so like, immature FE users have this tendency to want to help people, but it kind of backfires, because the way that they try to help people may not actually benefit the people they're helping. It's more of to make themselves feel better, or to improve the emotional atmosphere so that they feel more comfortable. Whereas the more mature FE user would think about it from that person's point of view, right? Like, oh, is what I'm doing something that they want? Like, is it something that they actually need? Is it something that actually benefits them in their lives in a very, tangible ways? Like, am I actually making a difference in the right way? So that it's more taking a step backwards, and like thinking about the situation, and really, understanding like, am I actually doing something helpful to them, or am I just doing it to make myself feel good? And this also applies to like saving the world, or helping the society at large. Like a more mature FE user would not be focusing on how they feel would benefit the world. Rather, it would be a focus on how the world can benefit. So it's like, constantly thinking of ways like, how should I improve the strategies, or how should I improve like the way I go about things, so that people actually benefit from me rather than me feeling like, oh, I'm doing so much greatness, I'm being this selfless person, And so I think that FE has a very huge potential to really help people and to be truly empathetic, to be truly putting the forefront at the forefront people's what they want, and understanding their motivations. But it takes a level of maturity to really understand that it is a two-way street. Like, people have to be receptive to you, and you also have to think about whether your actions, the way that it impacts other people, the way that it impacts the world, is truly a positive one. And once an FE user is able to go to this like point of maturity, the effects are pretty amazing, because you can actually get to a point where you're truly empathetic. Like, you truly understand things from the other person's perspective, rather than projecting like your own desires and wants on other people, or trying to help in a way that you yourself deem fit. You actually know what they need, and that is true listening. That is true listening to other people, true taking a pause in your own judgment, and really like giving them the platform to tell you about themselves and their views and their wants and needs. And that can really be, on a macro level, it can be very powerful, because with a mature use of FE, there's actually not a need for so much conflict in this world, because a lot of conflict in this world is a result of people not really listening to others, not really listening to other perspectives. And that can be, it's often seen in many areas in our lives. It can be leading up to wars, it can lead up to like political divide, it can lead up to just people hating each other. And it's all because we don't really listen to each other, and we don't really actually try to see things from their perspective. We don't really actually give them a chance to talk about what they believe in and what they want, And so I'm going to conclude by saying, with every function, there's always like this, the healthier use and the not so healthy use. And the point of my video is to highlight this so that, people can all try to use their functions to its full potential. And that's all for this video. The next video would be on introverted intuition. Remember to like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you soon.